This is Greg Pruitt, formerly of the Sports.
Listeners, like us on Facebook today. Facebook.com/the
So we need to try to help the world and the society we live in, and everywhere I go and everywhere we go, bullying is one of the problems in today's society. There's nothing worse than any person, big or small, strong or weak, adult or child, feeling picked on, pushed around, vulnerable, and victimized at the hands of a bully. Change comes one person at a time, and my good friends that No Such Thing as a Bully are working on skills and techniques and ways that we can all change and make things better for everyone. Find out more at
You Buy
Live in Ohio. It's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
The Sports Fix. We are back. Loaded slate coming up today. The sports writer extraordinaire, Jonathan Knight, my main man, going to join us here today in just a little bit, actually. Probably things with ponies and the first games, not playing for positions. And you know what they say, opportunity. Oh, well, there's opportunities all over for the Browns backups because there's injuries galore. Injury creates opportunity. If you're looking for the glass half full down in Berea. Try next week. I'm looking forward. I believe thing down. I'll tell you the dates and everything next week, but looking forward to getting the football guys back in the conversation. John McMullen from the Sports Network. We'll get Dr. Football in perhaps from time to time here, of course, on a much more limited, opening up the registration next week for the Sports Fix Fantasy Football League here. Another championship belt going to be on the line for somebody to win this year. We'll tell you more about that next week. We'll get BJ on to start giving you the rundown and getting you ready because really, after this week, and we are at the beginning of the all seasons, college, high school game coming up 5 weeks from now. Lots of football in the air here. We're going to talk about it today. We'll talk tribe, all of that, you guys. I'm ready to rock and roll. How about you? Rhetorical question. Of course you are. Let's do it. Welcome into the Sports Fix, you guys. J-Rocc, Jerry Myers, the Big Daddy on the microphone, all of those, and then some. That's me. Hey, how you doing? Welcome in, you guys. I am so glad to have you here each and every weekday when we crack that mic open at noon Eastern. Live across the Sports Fix Radio Network. Maybe you listen live right now on TuneIn and TuneIn's radio apps worldwide. One of my favorite places to recommend people listen to is just it is the one fail-safe site that you know you're going to hear the show live, crystal clear, HD audio. TuneIn.com, always great partners of the Sports Fix. Spreaker as well, one of my favorite partners here. They're all my favorite partners. Spreaker.com, a great site to listen to the show. Maybe you're listening on Mixlr. Maybe you're listening live on our home base, thesportsfix.net. All places for you to stream the show live as live can be, baby, when we kick it off on the air. And if you haven't, by the way, make sure you bookmark that, thesportsfix.net. Your one-stop shop for everything you need for the sport. Can't let a day go without thanking the thousands of you guys that listen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in digital delay format on platforms around the world, such as iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio provider, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, CarPlay, all of the other sites that you download us, subscribe to us, feed us, do us. Thank you guys so much for being here and getting your fix. And speaking of that, you know where I'm going. Get it, be with it, get in with us on the phones, on the Facebook, on the Twitter, the email, all the different ways. Just like Joe from Shaker Heights hit me up. He had all kinds of comments about the Browns and what's going on there. And Johnny Manziel Mania Part 2 starting to warm up and all of that stuff. And I appreciate that. I love cracking it open and hearing from you guys as you're listening to the show, whether it's live, whether it's the next day, whether it's a week and a half later. Always hit me up, 216-539-7535, 216-539-7535, Facebook.com/thesportsfix. Tweet with us at The Sports Fix, CLE, all one word, email The Sports Fix at AOL.com, Facebook.com/thesportsfix, or you can find me personally out there every once in a while. I'm under the 5,000 personal fan limit there for you guys. So every once in a while I can take a friend request. Jerry Myers, Myres, Facebook.com/thesportsfix, Twitter, tweet with us at The Sports Fix, CLE, email us, thesportsfix at AOL.com. Love to hear from you guys. And as I said, I heard from Joe in Shaker Heights. And he said, what's up with all the injuries? I said, man, that's right where I'm at with you on that. Another couple, actually, to add to the pile since the last time we were on the air. Barkevious Mingo needs to have his knee scoped. He's going to be out. Looks like the duration of the preseason here, it's going to be about a 4-week recovery for him, and that's really going to slip him behind. I mean, here he was fighting for his play in life there, just to stay in the radar with all that. We were just talking with Dan Wismar Wednesday. For those of you guys that were with us, Dan was really focusing on that outside linebacker position as we were talking about all the guys. You got Scott Solomon, who's really making a push. You know, you've got Nate Orchard, who they just drafted, they've got depth. You've got Armani Bryant looking to find time there. You've got a lot of guys in those linebacker spots there, and that's definitely going to be a bad thing for Barkevious Mingo. Where there's injury, there's opportunity, and as I jokingly said, that means there's opportunities all over the place if you're a backup on the Browns here, because there's injuries left and right. And the thing that concerns me, I think, early on the most is the hamstrings, the frequency of this. I brought it up the other day. I mean, it just leads me to wonder if perhaps there weren't conditioning issues. And look, these are professionals, man. I mean, I'm not trying to make a major story, make a mountain out of a molehill, any of that kind of stuff. I'm just simply saying that there is a plethora, like that word there. There's a plethora of hamstring injuries on the Browns here early on in camp, enough to make me wonder if there's a reason for such a trend there. But, you know, bodies continue. Glenn Winston as well, speaking of getting the going under the knife like Barkevious Mingo, Glenn Winston also having the knee scoped out, so he looks like he'll probably be down. And that was a guy that was going to get, especially here, some opportunity, and he's been kind of down and out there since camp got rolling with this knee issue there, because running back is one of the positions where there appears to be a lot of opportunity. As there's, you know, Isaiah Crowell is really going to get the bulk of the reps now. You've got the calf and the back of the knee deal with Terrence West causing him issues. Duke Johnson's got issues with the hamstring that's causing him to fall behind. We talked a bit about Glenn Winston there. I mean, opportunity there for guys, but a lot of the guys you wanted to get good looks at here banged up. Wide receivers, I mean, the hamstring injuries, Terrell Pryor, Dwayne Bowe, both of those guys banged up. Won't see Terrell Pryor, by the way, tonight at the Brown and Orange scrimmage, which is from 6 to 8 down in Columbus here. First time in a while that they've headed out on the road with that thing here. You won't see him either. Pierre Desir, he got injured yesterday as well. That's another one that stings, because he is somebody that I think was getting ready to make great stride. I mean, it's not like his season's over, but he's definitely got an injury issue there to deal with. And I mean, that just continues to pile up the bodies here of guys that are banned. I mean, look at yesterday, guys that didn't practice. You go through the list. I mean, these are a lot of names that you hope to see on the final roster. You got Dwayne Bowe dealing with the hamstring. You know, obviously, you know, Efo wasn't expected to play here. It was a redshirt season for him. Duke Johnson with the hamstring. Malcolm Johnson, who I'm interested in seeing at the kind of a hybrid fullback tight end type position there. I think he's got an outside shot at making this team. You got several guys out with concussion issues. Luke Lundy, they just brought him in just to fill some depth at linebacker with the guys going down. He got banged up with a concussion. Didn't practice yesterday. Mingo, we mentioned. Robert Nelson. Terrell Pryor with the hamstring. It was a day off for Randy Starks. Randall Telfer, another kind of hybrid tight end guy that they brought in there out of U.S. Joe Thomas. Terry Strizzi and Baby through some stuff here, but obviously those are some things that concern you there for the Browns. As a matter of fact, I kind of want to pick up on all of that here. Let's get Jonathan Knight in on the conversation here. I want to pick up on all of this stuff. We'll talk some Browns. Terrell Pryor, they're heading to his Columbus for the Brown and Orange scrimmage. Speaking of, NFL, they're getting rolling, and of course the NFL cannot be happy about the fact that while the focus should be on football, as I just went all ADD and just went off into a different topic here, getting off the Browns for just a second, but as I'm heading into the break, they cannot be happy that right off the bat, the same way the focus ended last season, it's right back on it. Let's see, we ended last season focusing on, Ray Rice was in the news, and Deflategate was in the news, and Alden Smith was in the news, and players getting in trouble was in the news. And hey, guess what? We come back for the football season. Deflategate's still in the news. They're still dealing with, and by the way, you know, hey, say what you will. But I think it's a damn shame that Tom Brady's personal emails are out here being broken down to the world. They might be innocuous, and it might be fun to make fun of a rich guy and the things that he gets bothered by. But imagine if those were your personal emails that people were going through, and they were, showing the love letters that you sent to your wife on your lunch break or to your girlfriend that your wife didn't know about. I'm just saying. Imagine that. It's amazing. This guy had to give up his phone, and now Gawker and all of these sites can just publicly put all the stuff that was in this guy's phone out there we're still talking about Deflategate. We're still talking about players in trouble. Ray Rice. I heard Ray Rice's name thrown out around the Browns with all the running back. Listen, the reason Ray Rice isn't playing football is because Ray Rice can't play football anymore. I saw a general manager said something the other day, said it's just not there on tape. There is no tape to make you take the risk on Ray Rice. But anyways, Aldon Smith gets himself arrested here. This just broke California. He missed, of course, 9-game suspension last year. Had all kinds of issues here since he's come into the NFL. He was booked into the Santa Clara County Jail on a DUI charge here. He's had several run-ins with the law and DUIs over the past. And again, Aldon Smith's got himself in some trouble. The 49ers are going to have to obviously deal with that there. But the NFL cannot like seeing this season begin with all those same things in the headline, especially it's your Hall of Fame weekend, your spotlight weekend, and here we go again. We'll talk about all this. Let me get a break. Jonathan Knight's trying to get in on the hotline. Let's get a quick break. When we come back, sports writer extraordinaire Jonathan Knight calling in, going to join us on the hotline. We'll talk some Browns, brown and orange scrimmage, and so much more. Don't go anywhere. JK, the sports writer extraordinaire Jonathan Knight, next up next here. Next up next. That was nice. Here next on the Sports Fix. What a morning. What a way to start it off. We'll be right back.
Get your fix.
Because it's Friday, you ain't got no job, and you ain't got to do.
It's the Sports Fix. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, before we go to the break, I want to talk to you a little bit again about our good friends at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, some of the hottest fights in the world today. Each and every one of their huge events, Harry Buffalo is one of the few places in Northeast Ohio you can go there and watch each and every UFC fight at the Harry Buffalo. And let me tell you, I've been there. The people are out the door. They are to the rafters. It is one of the craziest environments for some UFC fights. Wing Mondays, they've got great deals on wings and drinks, and every day of the week there's a different special, a different deal. And don't forget the Bison Burger, the unbelievable. It is the combination of a fantastic burger and eating healthy combined into one unbelievable sandwich. You have got to get a Bison Burger while you're there. So whatever you're looking for, whatever day of the week, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sundays, there's something for you at the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Check them out today. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
The Sports Fix is on iHeartRadio. Download the free iHeart app today. Subscribe to the show and get your fix.
How to be a great dad in 15 seconds. Bike ride, go fish, walk in the park, phone call, milkshake, play catch, picnic, fly a kite, tell jokes, laugh, talk, read a story, tell a story, bumper car, swing set, bowling, pillow fight, cut loose, stay tight. Whew. Because the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting off those victories with a real Fantasy Jock. The crew over at Fantasy Jockey Duty Championship belts, rings, trophies, and so much more for all your fantasy sports needs. There's literally only one place to go. FantasyJocks.com.
Hey everybody, this is Jerry the King Lawler from WWE.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix Live. J-Rocc back with you, getting ready to go to the hotline. Be joined by my man, the sports writer extraordinaire, Jonathan Knight. You guys can keep rolling with us. Facebook and Twitter. Facebook.com/thesportsfix. Tweet with us at thesportsfixcle. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. You cannot use the phones because that is where Jonathan Knight lies right now, the sports writer extraordinaire, and I'm going to turn him up and bring him into the conversation. JK, welcome back. It's been 2 weeks. How you doing, my friend?
Pretty good, Jerry. Pretty good. Can't complain.
I see you traveling the world, throwing out first pitches everywhere. Every time I turn around, Jonathan Knight is christening another baseball game, man. How's it going there? I saw the pictures you posted from the Rubber Ducks game that you posted the other day?
That was the Rubber Ducks game a couple weeks ago, yeah. So one Saturday was the Rubber Ducks. That was 2 Saturdays ago, and then last Saturday was at the Lake County Captains game for Cleveland Sports History Night, which was loads of fun. So yeah, both those nights were fantastic. I'd never been to either park actually, so it was a really cool experience to get out there and see what that was all about, and obviously talk to people about Major League and the book. So yeah, it was 2 really good weekends. Really, probably the 2 best weekends schlepping a book around.
Classic Park, by the way, a great
one of
those parks, beautiful.
I mean, it was just, and to the point of just flashing up on the scoreboard randomly, and one side was Colts and one side was. So tonight will be a little better thought out than that. So we shall see.
What's the local buzz like? Because we're up here, and so it's a total different environment. What is it like? Is it like, man, all right, the Browns are coming? Is it Browns fever? Have they painted the town brown and orange? I mean, what is the buzz like down there?
No, I mean, honestly, no. This is so low key. It is more news in Cleveland than it is here. I mean, everyone here is excited about Ohio State, and honestly, I think a big part of it, if Terrell Pryor were playing tonight, it probably would be a bigger deal. That would be the hook for a lot of people. Now they're going to get a big crowd. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're going to get a decent crowd out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there again, because it's at the Horseshoe, so enough people will. I mean, you could basically put a game of horseshoes out there, and people would come and watch it. I mean, people just want to get in there, so there'll be a decent crowd. But yeah, in terms of buzz, in terms of media coverage, nobody really cares. I think everyone kind of sees this for what it is, which is sort of a dry run for the Browns exploring the possibility of moving their training camp down this way in the near future. Yeah. So I think that's really what this is. But yeah, there's really no buzz. Honestly, I think there's a little more buzz about the Steelers game on Sunday night and Jerome Bettis getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. I've heard more. I get the sense that that's a bigger deal and more anticipated there. Because I got to be honest with you, and this is disgusting to admit, but we always think of Cleveland or Columbus rather as a battleground city in Ohio, that it's Bengals and Browns battling for the city. And that's not actually true. It's still a battleground city, but it's really a 3-way battle. It's Bengals, Browns, and Steelers. The Steelers have as much a presence here, at least vocally, maybe not in numbers, but in terms of vocally and obnoxiousness, as either of the other two. So it really is a battleground city in ways that are really kind of disgusting. Like the Steelers should not have.
They do, absolutely. You know what? You brought up an interesting point, though, talking about kind of a test run for moving camp down there, which is something people have heard a lot talked about, and Columbus negotiating to try to get, a multi-year deal or whatever. But deal is that to and their deal for Columbus?
So I think it would generate buzz, because I think that And it would be, and it wouldn't be, it would be at a smaller school, similar to back in the days, back in the 70s or 80s, before the facility was built at Pryor, which that was fun. I really like that atmosphere. And really, I
Me too.
As much as I like that, I'm really confused by why they're even exploring this. Not because it's not a good idea, because I think it is. And I think coaches and players would all agree that it's always better to get away and have training camp sort of be a separate experience from just at the regular place in the regular season. It's always better to do that, but obviously it costs more. It seems like it'd be cost prohibitive to do this. I'm really surprised. I guess that's good, anything better. And let's be honest, this is really a sort of a ploy to try and get Columbus back. If anything, you got to reach out and try and get some new fans, because they're certainly not doing it on the field. So let's try and do it with training camp. Let's try and do it with any number of little ways. And that's, I think, the primary motivation of doing this, because there's any number of small schools. You could go back to any of the schools where the Browns have held it before, honestly. But this would obviously be reaching out to Columbus and trying to nurture an entire new fan base. So we shall see. I wouldn't be surprised if it does happen, and when it does, I think there will be quite a bit of buzz about it.
And really, since Jimmy Haslam bought this team, since this ownership team, that's been one of their big kind of goals that they were heading after, was getting after that Columbus market. So clearly, that's something that they have focused on since they started with this here. It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, like you said, a big crowd. They sold 60,000, or gave out, I should say, 60,000 tickets because it's free for this thing, but they actually opened up another 10,000 I think this week, so it'll be closer to 70,000 in the shoe for this thing. To 70,000 people to watch some. It's not even a game, it's not even a practice game, it's a practice of a practice game. It's practicing against each other. And I've been to I've been to the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 of those that they did here at the stadium downtown, and it is what it is, but interesting that 70,000 people will be down there watching that thing here. And as you said, Terrell Pryor, you brought him up. I kind of wanted to talk to him anyway, so it was a good segue into that, because when we talked 2 weeks ago, you weren't buying the hype at all. It was in Terrell Pryor and his switch over and attempt to become a wide receiver, but apparently from what it's been on the field, he has at least put himself in the ball game. I mean, there's players on the Browns point blank saying, hey man, this guy is going to make the squad. He's going to make it as a receiver. I mean, a lot of people, apparently the work that he said he was putting in the offseason really was being put in, because he's at least put himself in the conversation that it's gone from a novelty kind of talking point to as a wide receiver. What do you think about the first 2 weeks here of camp and Terrell Pryor?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, good for him to be able to transition himself, whether or not it works.
Yes.
You applaud a guy who's willing to evolve himself and change. He could have very easily just said, no, I'm a quarterback, tried to make that work, and I think that's going to happen, at least not in the NFL. So, hats off to him for taking this risk, really, a calculated risk, but to sort of reinvent himself. So hats off. But at the same time, I still feel the same way. As much as that's nice, and I'm sure he's a nice athlete. He can do some nice things. But I feel like this is something we see a lot, almost every year. Every training camp, there's got to be a Mr. August. This is what the Browns are doing. And this goes back. This isn't just the expansion era. I mean, this goes back to Michael Jackson. This goes back to Ben Gay. I mean, this goes way back. There's always somebody. Yeah, there's always somebody who emerges in the preseason. Oh my God, we found a diamond in the rough. Watch this, and whoever it is, we're always like really, really thrilled because they just light it up in the preseason, specifically the games, even more so than the practices. But they're excited because we think we found a Willie Mays Hayes here, and then the actual games began, and we realize, oh, okay,
it's Alex Cole.
It's
not
thing,
Willie Mays Hayes.
It's a little different, yeah. And and the other aspect of this too is the, for lack of a better term, the Asdrubal Cabrera, Joe Hayden syndrome that I tend to call it, in that being that in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
Yes.
So when you do get a decent enough player, or anyone who has any modicum of talent at all, when you surround him with just this despot of nothingness and just really inferior talent, then he's going to look pretty good. So it doesn't say a whole lot. The bar is so low that when somebody does look impressive, like, okay, for the Browns, this is pretty good. You really be making this much gain? Probably not.
You stink, man. Really? We're going there already, man. All right. Man. I don't know. I'm fired up. I really do. I do. I believe that there's more than meets the eye when it comes to that, because I'm intrigued by if the physical skill set is there, which I do believe it is. Although Dan Wismar and I talked about this a little bit. The lateral movement is something I've got to see, the ability to get in and out of the routes, but being a quarterback, I've got to think that there's a unique, and this is not blinders, JK. I'm curious what you think. I've got to think there's a different thought process there, because not many wide receivers. Some played quarterback in high school, but none played quarterback at as high a level as Terrell Pryor NFL at the level. So I wonder, and I'm curious to see. You can anticipate what different, but you can kind of anticipate the thought process of a quarterback. And so I wonder by this, because athletically I think he's got the skill set, but he's got the mentality ball to.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I would hear is that he becomes another Josh Cribbs. I really don't see it being any more than that. And I don't mean that to slam Cribbs, because that was a really fun ride, and he provided a lot, and really for a long time was really the only thing he was on. So, yeah, I mean, if Pryor can do that, I'll be on board with that. I'll be excited with it. I don't know that he is. I don't know that he's going to have quite that versatility that Cribbs brought to kick returns and punt returns, that sort of thing. So I don't know if he's going to quite go that far. Receiver, more so than a special teams guy. More like a Cordell Stewart. Cordell Stewart is sort of what I keep envisioning too. I think there's a guy who is similar to Pryor, was at a higher level than Cribbs was at quarterback in college, and really was kind of a surprise. I think that he was drafted as a quarterback and eventually did play quarterback, but especially early in his career when the Steelers didn't need him to play quarterback and they were doing all kinds of creative for them, and he filled that niche. So if Pryor can do that, and they can do some clever things and do some of the things that I think they kind of thought that Johnny Football was going to do last year, and then realized he was 3'6" and that wasn't going to work. So maybe this will work out, and you'll get a little more versatility, a little more for defensive coordinators to have to worry about. Which, if nothing else, hey, if we can keep a defensive coordinator to think for 45 more minutes about the Browns than he did otherwise, then I'll take that.
Hey, I'll take that. Like you said, I would take Josh Cribbs too, because I think he could be Josh Cribbs at a lesser level of a returner, obviously, but a higher level of a receiver. So. And of course, you brought up a great point. Obviously, the dearth at the position makes him stand out. I was going to bring up anyway. You brought up Johnny Football, so we might as well go there. The guy has 2 good practices in a row, and they're ready to crown him king. Man, I've gotten Browns fans over the last couple days on social media just because, man, they drink the Kool-Aid quick. Seriously, this is in a row, because as far as I understand, they're the first and second good practices that he's had since he's been a member of the Cleveland Browns. So let's start there. And the fact that we're a week into training camp and he's still not caught up to Josh McCown, that should be scary to you, just keep that in mind. But anyways, what are your thoughts here? I do like the fact that at least the buzz outside of Cleveland has been, and the camp that we've talked about it. I don't see anything happening there. But where are you at with Johnny Reboot Part 2 here in the first part of camp?
Well, let's applaud Johnny for, it took him a year, but he finally had a good practice. So that's great. For some it takes long. 2, you're right. I'm sorry. Don't shortchange the guy. 2 straight practices. I mean, it's maybe honestly the first time in his life, because he's never really had to practice with these solid practices. But, he's basically the Donald Trump. I mean, let's face it. However you feel about him, whatever your party persuasion may be, Trump is not going to be the nominee. He doesn't belong there. Everybody knows he doesn't. And you can say that for Manziel. It's the same thing. He's just going to dominate all the news coverage, regardless of whether or not he's playing. That's all anyone's going to be talking about, just like Trump. Whether or not he's running, whatever he's saying, whatever he's doing is what people are going to be focusing on. So that's what it's going to be. So regardless of how long it is going to be McCown, which I give him 4 games, one way or the other, by October, it is going to be Manziel. My guess is injury will step in and Manziel will be thrust into the starting role. But after what happened with Brian Hoyer last year, McCown's going to be on an incredibly short leaguer to get Manziel in there and prove how smart they are. That it will be, certainly by mid-October, Johnny Manziel will be starting. And once again, we will find out all of his shortcomings. Shortcomings are still his shortcomings. So this is reality TV. This is a sideshow. This is just, it's irrelevant. Every time he takes the field, every little news nugget you hear about him, you take with a huge grain of salt, good or bad. It's just, this is entertainment, and this is how you get through August when there's not much else to talk about. You focus on Johnny football.
I love it. This is how you get. And it's for the first couple of days of camp, and I was hearing from guys that were down there covering just how awful the first few days of camp he looked, and how he was literally 4th in a 4-dog race, and if there would have been an emergency quarterback, he may have been 5th. So I just want to temper everybody with that. I mean, I sure do hope. Listen, anybody that thinks I'm all anxious to go into this season with Josh McCown as the starting quarterback is absolutely crazy, because I don't see anything much there. But I got to be honest, I hope you're wrong. I don't know. Maybe I hope you're right, because I don't know that I look for a full season of Josh McCown at quarterback either. But I hope you're wrong, because I think if Josh McCown is 4 weeks and out, then I think this season goes spiraling down the toilet quickly. And I have hope on the defensive side of the ball for what this team is going to be able to do, that it's not going to be a complete cluster mess of a season here coming up. And Ontario is really that. I mean, we could all be wrong there, but, I don't know. I go back to what Dan said, and I don't know if I asked you this or not before, but Dan Wismar said several times, he just said it again the other day, that he has no reason to believe, regardless of his past, that Josh McCown will be any worse and will probably be better than what the Browns got at quarterback last season as a whole when you look at the quarterback position. Yes, he said better.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, he said better is negligible. We'll see how that goes. But he doesn't believe that it will be any worse than the quarterback play that the Browns got. Think about that.
Issue with that. No, I think that McCown this year is better than Hoyer at his worst last year. Not. I think regardless of whether it's Manziel or Thaddeus Lewis, whoever they truck in for the last 6 weeks, once everybody's hurt and nobody cares anymore, you will not see anything better than Brian Hoyer. And I don't mean to celebrate Brian Hoyer that he was the greatest thing we ever saw, but he was competent. And it's been so long since we saw consistently competent over the course of an entire season, or for as long as they let him start, that you're going to see a major drop-off this year. McCown or Manziel, neither one of them, over the course of 10 games, however many games it was that Hoyer started last year, you're going to see a serious activity in offense, however you want to measure it. You're going to notice. It's going to be noticeable. It will be very noticeable. So, I got to go the other side. I got to go the other way with that argument.
See, I'm with you as far as the overall. Where I agree with him is as far as the stat line, and you look at statistically whatever the completion percentage was. I don't have it in front of me with the number of touchdowns, and I don't see it being much different than that. Like, I agree that I don't see it being worse than that, because the position did fall apart. Now, I don't see Josh McCown having any of the better games that Hoyer had earlier in the season. I definitely don't think he reaches the higher level. I mean, and again, like you said, this is not to celebrate Brian Hoyer. I'm very curious to see what he does in Houston here this year. I'm with you, and that's where I do agree, sadly, with what you say about Manziel, because the Hoyer thing, the hometown thing, the loyalty was it took an unbelievable set of circumstances to fight off Manziel mania as long as they did last year before it finally had to happen at the end of the season, at least as far as the Browns were concerned. I personally would have waited 2 more weeks. But either way, we know what happened. That doesn't happen this year, like you said. I mean, one bad week. I mean, hell, Brian Hoyer barely made it through the beginning of the season to get through and get his feet under him, and he had to have a couple of massive comebacks to make that happen. But if McCown has a bad couple games, like you said, by 3 or 4, it's time for them to make the switch, because there's no hometown heroes. There's no fighting for loyalty for Hoyer. It's just move this guy out of the way and let's see who's next.
Yeah, like I said, a very short leash, and it feels like to draw a parallel, which may not work for everybody. But if you remember, after Bernie was cut in 1993, which Brian Hoyer is not Bernie Kosar. I don't mean to draw that parallel,
right.
But if you remember the following year, it was basically because they loved Vinny Testaverde. Bill Belichick adored Vinny Testaverde and thought, for whatever reason, that he was his model quarterback. And I remember going into 1994 saying, okay, this is just, you're not going to be any better. Like, you might, in a single game, you might have better statistically, you might be better. Vinny might be better than Bernie was at his worst. But over the whole, on the whole, you're not going to improve. And that's exactly what we saw. The Browns themselves did improve. There were many aspects of that team that were better the year after Bernie left. Quarterback was not one of them. They took a serious decline. Vinny Testaverde was just not going to be a playoff caliber quarterback, and we saw that. And that's how I see this. I see this going the exact same way, only instead of one guy that you're dedicated to, now it's 2, both of whom are inferior to what you let go.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm totally with you there, man. And I had a lot of hope that the running game was going to be a big proponent and a big component of the Browns offense this year, but they can't scrape up any healthy running backs at this point. By the way, do the number of injuries this early concern you? I mean, regardless of what you thought the season, whether you thought they were going to win 4 games, 8 games, whatever, does the early rush of these injuries, especially with them, the hamstrings to me scream of guys coming in out of condition for the beginning of camp here, which I don't know whose responsibility that falls on because they were on their own for the last 6 weeks or whatever. But, I mean, does it concern you? Because there is a large amount of Browns banged up in the early part of camp.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah, I guess there may be something to sort of like the staph infection problem had a few years ago with that whole controversy. So I don't know if there's something behind that. If there's any connection between. I don't know. But on the whole, does it concern me? Honestly, no. Season form. I mean, it's just if there's one thing that they are plagued by, it is injuries. Whether it's beginning of the season, middle, or end, they are just, at some point during the season, they are just going to be ravaged by injuries, and that's been their bugaboo for 15 years. Not just that they're ravaged by injury, but that they just don't have any depth then to step in when they do, and that is exactly the case now. So maybe this will be a little different, because typically you're right, you don't see this early. Usually you get into week 6, 7, 8 before starters start falling down, and then you start dragging guys out of factories in order to round out the roster, and therefore the last 6 they've been the last 2 years. So maybe they're getting the injuries out of the way. So maybe it's encouraging that they're going to get hurt. They're going to get hurt early and have more than they do usually. So but maybe we're onto something there.
A coffee here this morning, no doubt. What's off one? How I tied it back into the movie there. He needs to hear that. But anyways, I did. You just made me think of something. I mentioned it earlier in the doing this man off the foot as the quarterback. We're in that area at the end of that, and I'm just curious. This was what my buddy Bill Belichick keeping him around that long as this. Do you cut Tom Brady? But there's no way Bill Belichick lets Tom Brady be a 40-year-old. Cuts ties with everybody before they reach the point of nowhere. I'm curious what your thoughts were that Tom Brady thinks he's going to play that long with Bill Belichick. Could you see that scenario eventually causing a situation there?
Honestly, I could. I mean, as strange as it sounds, and as much as there's that totally believable theory that really Belichick owes all of his success to Tom Brady, that he never would have won any Super Bowls without Tom Brady at quarterback. As much as that is reality, I think, or as much as that's a plausible theory, I can absolutely see him throwing Brady under the bus and moving on. I think he could totally turn into a Brady as Brett Favre, Brady as Peyton Manning. He may well play another 6 or 7 years, but if he does, he won't be in New England the whole time. I think Belichick, I think you saw a little bit of it with him with this incident. I think from the very first start, when this story first started coming out, and the first time Belichick was asked about it, his first question was, or his first response was, "Yeah, you need to ask Tom about that." Like, he didn't stand up, he didn't try to deflect it or absorb it or whatever. He just pointed the finger straight at Tom Brady and said, "Yeah, this is your mess. You're going to deal with it." And that's not what you see in the NFL. And sports don't usually see a coach throw a player, nonetheless a Michael Jordan, best in your generation type of player who has essentially delivered you all of your success. So I think there is an example of, we're reminded of how much of an ochre Bill Belichick can act like at times. So, I can think this I don't think it's going to happen this year. I don't think it's going to happen in the near future. But at some point, you will start to see the shades start to pull on Tom Brady, and you will see the talent start to diminish, skills begin to diminish, if you will. And Belichick won't hesitate to cut him loose. I think either by cutting him, by trading him, whatever, that Belichick will say enough's enough. I'm going to move on. I'm sure he feels that it's the system, and he just needs to replace him with an able-bodied quarterback, and they'll continue on like they have, just another cog in the machine. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to see that happen. It may not be as dramatic as what he did to Bernie, but it will be along those same lines.
All I see is, can you imagine? If they don't have a quarterback anyway, and they're not going to find one in the next 2 or 3 years, Tom Brady as the quarterback for the New York Jets. I'm just saying, man, if you're going to spite Belichick, you're going to the Jets, or you're coming to Cleveland, one or the other. And there you go. Yeah. Maybe that's what'll happen. Cleveland will get Tom Brady right as he's on the backside of his career, and he truly has diminishing skills and all of that. Anyways, but I do see, to wrap that up, I do see a headline in a few years. Coach Kosar to Brady, I feel your pain, because
right.
there's no way he's playing 7 or 8 more years for Bill Belichick, man.
No.
He's got 2, 3 tops, and you're right, especially after that. I thought that was hilarious, but I think the whole cell phone thing is. Could you imagine, JK, if right now somebody made you turn over your cell phone and you couldn't delete your stuff, you couldn't do it, you just had to hand over your phone, and then people were just allowed to read the emails that you sent to your kids, to your wife, to your mom, to whoever, and put them out to the world? Is that not kind of amazing?
Yeah, and that's what, honestly, let's face it, regardless of anything else, that's what was the smoking gun, to put it in Watergate terms. This really does have a Watergate feel to it. It really was, whether you're talking about taped conversations in the White House or Tom Brady's phone, it was sort of guilt by association and guilt by, you never actually legally declared guilty. You just performed guilty actions that's like, oh, yeah, you probably were guilty, So it does feel like that. But yeah, you're right. I don't know how it got to this point where it was basically the only way you could prove yourself innocent was by handing over a cell phone and letting the public see everything that was on there, reading your emails, reading your texts, all of this, because it would have gone public, or at least most of it would have gone public. So yeah, who knows? I mean, it's strange, and really, it's not. I mean, 4 games, and I get that. That's a nice chunk of the season, but keep in mind that Ray Rice got 2 games for beating up his wife last year. Josh Gordon got 8 games for smoking or for cough syrup, essentially. So, yeah, this is really not that unreasonable. It's time to accept it, move on, and we'll see you in week 5.
I'll just tell you, man. I mean, I'm no ogre. I don't have, like, these skeletons in my closet or anything like that. But just conversations that people would not understand out of context, oh, my Lord. The things that could come out of my cell phone if I turned it over right now, you would think I was a monster by things taken out of context, because you know what I mean? Because you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Right. Oh,
yeah,
sure.
It's
and
nuts.
There's a whole the NFL kind of investigation, very different from an actual police FBI type investigation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a whole different set of rules.
I tell people that. I go, no, you can't delete stuff. Just hand me your phone right now. Just give me your phone right now. That's not not cool. JK, my friend, hey, you hear the music in the background. Who you throwing out the first pitch for this week? You got a Clippers game coming up. What do you got coming up here, man?
Yeah, I shouldn't I? I need to stay in shape. Yeah, if anybody's out there looking for somebody to throw out a first pitch, I'm available. So, yeah, give me a call.
If only you were offensively. See, they got enough pitching with the Indians. I was going to say, man, you may have an outside shot of making the Tribe if you had a little stroke in the bat there going on, man. But, anyways, I think
the only person who would swing at one of my pitches is me. So I
there you
think
go.
There's an interesting dichotomy there, right?
Any signings coming up this week, my friend?
No, not this week. We're actually stemming into New York a little bit. We're getting a little New York press coverage from the Indians are going to be heading up there, and then the Yankees are heading down here. So we're getting some tie-in with the movie and the Indians playing the Yankees. So we'll get some. Let's see what the Big Apple thinks about this thing.
All right, let's see what Clue Haywood's up to here right now, man.
Indeed,
JK,
yes.
Yeah, that's right. See, I know my major league drop-ins, dynamite drop-in, if you will.
Dynamite drop-in, Monty.
JK, we can do this all day, my friend. Have a good one. Enjoy the scrimmage tonight. I know you're on pins and needles, waiting to see that one.
Yeah.
And
well, the Browns they're playing themselves, so they have a chance to win. I mean, let's face it, they are a heavy favorite to beat themselves.
There is a rockin' blast 1 and 2 here this weekend. There's dollar dogs and everything, man. So, whatever. There's lots of stuff to get into. JK, you have some fun, and we'll catch up next week, my friend.
You bet, buddy. Looking forward to it.
There'll be a real preseason game, even though it's just the stinking preseason. There will actually be another opponent on the other side of the field next week.
That's right, and it's for real, only not really, but yes.
Then the chances for victory decline much more than they do this week.
Indeed,
exactly. JK, have a good one, and we'll catch up next week, my friend.
Take care, buddy.
You got it. Long conversation. Thanks to JK for sticking with us here. Let's take a break, get you the news, and get right back into it. Jump into the fire with Mike Brandenberry from DidTheTribeWinLastNight.com. We'll talk about those Indians. Well, I doubt he's looking to talk much football. We'll talk a little Cavs, too. Hey, did you guys see? You know what? Good news. If you see that Kevin Love and Kyrie and LeBron are heading to Team USA camp, that means they're playing basketball again, which is one step closer to playing basketball for the Cavs, who, by the way, are the favorites here. Odds just came out this morning. 2-1 favorites to be the NBA champions next year. I cannot wait till we can start really. I mean, we got 2 months to bridge the gap here for training camp to come back. Let's talk about that, talk some Tribe, talk about who knows what with Mike Brandenberry from DidTheTribeWinLastNight.com. Coming up next, baby. Don't go anywhere after the news here on The Fix.
The Sports Fix, your choice for intelligent talk.
That was wonderful.
Bravo!
I loved that.
Oh, it was great.
Intelligent talk.
Well, it was pretty good.
Well, it wasn't bad.
Well, there were parts of it that weren't very good, though.
It could have been a lot better.
I didn't really like it.
These guys must be on the wrong station.
It was pretty terrible.
It was bad.
It was awful.
It was terrible.
Get him away!
Hey, boo!
Boo!
The Sports Fix.
Sports Fix listeners, do you tweet? So do we. So tweet with us 24/7 at the Sports Fix CLE.
How to be a great dad in 15 seconds. Bike ride, go fish, walk in the park, phone call, milkshake, play catch, picnic, fly a kite, tell jokes, laugh, talk, read a story, tell a story, bumper car, swing set, bowling, pillow fight, cut loose, stay tight. Whew. Because the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Have you gotten your copy of Cleveland's Finest yet? Highlighting the best moments, players, and media members in Cleveland sports history? In-depth, personal interviews with some of the top names in Cleveland sports fill the pages of this incredible book. Cleveland's Finest by Vince McKee is this year's must-have book for every Cleveland sports fan. Available now at Amazon.com. Get your copy today.
Business owners and professionals, do you want to take your business, your product, your team, your event to the next level? You want to advertise right here with the Sports Fix. Our listeners are among the most loyal listeners, terrestrial or internet. Universe is not only the radio show, but tens of thousands of fans on Facebook and Twitter. Email me, Jerry Myers, thesportsfix@AOL.com. That's thesportsfix@AOL.com. And let me help you swing for the fences and hit it out of the park right here on the Sports Fix.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
News break.
Good morning, I'm Bob Picozzi. The class includes 6 players and 2 front office executives. Those 8 will be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame tomorrow night in Canton. 60 miles northeast of Canton is where the Browns are holding training camp. Quarterback Johnny Manziel says he understands that his role is to be the backup to Josh McCown.
I'm definitely not getting caught up or enamored with the whole starter backup role. I'm kind of deferring to Coach Pat on that and not getting too caught up in it, because I think last year that was probably a little bit of my problem as well, getting caught up in the starters and the reps to ones and the backup and all this.
In limited duty as a rookie last year, Manziel completed 18 of 35 passes for 175 yards. Cowboys wide receiver Dez Bryant insists he's okay after straining a hamstring in 7-on-7 drills in training camp. The Cowboys have today off. Bryant expects to return to practice tomorrow. The Mets will try to extend their winning streak to 7 tonight when they open a 3-game interleague series at Tampa Bay. New York has opened up a 1.5-game lead over Washington in the National League East. Because of several seating adjustments, the seating capacity at 88-year-old Michigan Stadium has been reduced by 2,000. The new capacity is now only 107,600.
Millions of guys love Dollar Shave Club. Members get a full pack of amazing razors for just a few bucks. Big razor corporations want you to milk your old blades for weeks. Millions of smarter guys at DollarShaveClub.com change their blades whenever they want. DollarShaveClub.com. You're listening to the Sports Fix.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix Live. J-Rocc back with you. Thanks again to Jonathan Knight, Sportswriter Extraordinaire, for joining me here. We're getting ready to roll into hour 2. Mike Brandenberry from DidTheTribeWinLastNight.com getting ready to join me on the hotline. You guys with me here, and thank you very much. And, of course, your conversation can keep going all the time on Facebook, on Twitter, on the emails, Facebook.com/TheSportsFix, Twitter The Sports Fix CLE, email us, thesportsfix@aol.com here, and get ready to go back to the phones here. Real quick, I didn't even mention earlier in the show before JK joined us here, and I want to thank you guys as always. Every weekend it seems that I've got a truckload of events for you guys to come out. Looking forward tomorrow to heading back up to Erie, Pennsylvania. Always a good time when I'm running the roads up there to Erie, about 90 minutes, east, north a little bit of here. Anyways, looking forward to seeing some of you guys tomorrow. So if you're in the area, you want to check out a little bit of my pro wrestling action, pick up a brand new King of Cleveland t-shirt. I will be there. Saga Club tomorrow. Actually, the next couple of weekends. Again, just had the long 3-day weekend last weekend. I've got another 3-day weekend coming up next weekend throughout the middle towns of Pennsylvania, Johnstown, Washington, Pennsylvania. The weekend after that, I've got 5 shows in 3 days. It's ridiculous. I'm literally wrestling a Friday night, up to Erie on Saturday morning, down to Willoughby on Saturday evening, back up outside of Erie on Sunday afternoon, out to Lorain, Ohio, Sunday evening. A crazy weekend coming up, you guys. But this weekend in Erie on Saturday, always good when I see some of you guys who come up and say, hey, I've listened to the Sports Fix, and I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow at the Saga Club in Erie, Pennsylvania. All right, guys, now I'm looking forward to getting back to the show, going to the phone lines, and my man Jonathan Knight, just joined us. Mike Brandeberry from Did the Tribe Win Last Night. Hey, Jonathan Knight is from didthetribewinlastnight.com too. Mike Brandeberry on the hotline, joining me now. I know he's ready to talk some Browns training camp with me. Mike, how you doing?
J-Rocc, what's going on? I know you're joking when you say I'm ready to talk Browns training camp, but hey, man, the way the Indians have gone, and we've talked about how much people like the Browns, versus everything else. I'm just glad you're letting me still be a part of the show. It's nice because apparently Indian season has come to a close here in the last couple weeks.
Mike's like, man, even if I didn't want to be here, I'm glad to be here because nobody wants to talk to me about the Indians anymore. I hear you, man.
I just feel like, unfortunately, like all your listeners probably just, you said I was coming on and they all, went and mowed the lawn or, went back to work,
Oh, man, that's okay, man. I mean, it's only brown and orange scrimmage day, guys. Come on. No, listen,
Who's
I hear
favorite
you.
in that? Is it brown or is it orange?
I don't know, man.
Who's,
but like
the
JK
Vegas
said,
favorite?
Like JK said, you can probably safely put your money on the Browns to win today, and either way, you may be right. So maybe
if anyone could beat themselves, it would be the Browns.
Hey, come on now. We got to start fresh. Got to start fresh here, and we'll allow themselves plenty of opportunities to open themselves up for all of that stuff. But I'm with you on the tribe stuff, and that's why I was kind of thinking before we even got rolling. I'm like, okay, how are Mike and I going to do this? Because I don't want to – I'm not going to sit here and go, hey, the Indians this, and then you're down that, and it sounds all depressing, or I'm trying to go into fantasy land. None of that. Listen, we understand that the season has gone off the tracks from what they hoped it would be, what fans hoped it would be, etc. So let's compartmentalize a little bit. Like, the first question I wanted to ask you is, let's get out of the big picture. Let's go to the small picture again. Since you and I talked last was the trade deadline. And obviously, Murphy was one we had been pretty much predicting since the offseason last year. And so not much of a surprise there. They rolled out Zubchinski. You and I talked off the air. The nice flip that they were able to pull off for Brandon Moss to bring in a guy who could potentially be a nice piece in a year or two for your team. But starting with what they did, they cleared out some roster spots. They opened up some room here. Talk to me about that, the change in the roster now just since the trade deadline, and now what you'd like to see out of the guys that are here now, or who you'd like to see next.
Yeah, I think what they did at the deadline, like you said, let's look at the small picture. I mean, the disappointment that is this season, once you get by that, I mean, there's not anything that they could really do at the deadline to fix this team, I guess, or at least fix this team quickly. So what they did, I like what they did at the deadline. They moved Murphy, they moved Moss, and they moved Zubchinski. And maybe what the average fan doesn't realize or looks at,
the Indians, because of the long-term contracts that they have signed to their core players and, the two albatrosses in Swisher and Bourne, before they made those deals, they're projected to have a 2016 payroll of about $100 million. And you and I both know the Indians are not going to $100 million. And let's be realistic. It would be foolish to go to $100 million for a team that's going to underachieve by probably 20 or 25 games of where they thought they were going to be on opening day. So this is, if you're going to spend a bunch of money, this isn't the team to spend a bunch of money on. So the moves that they made, roughly they cut about somewhere between $15 and $18 million off their projected 2016 payroll. They probably get back to an area where they're a little more comfortable in terms of they probably have a little bit of flexibility. They don't have a lot, to be honest.
Yeah.
But they're probably in an area where they're a little more comfortable heading to the off season. And considering the amount of payroll that they cut, I'm not really sure that they lost anything of great value. David Murphy's had a nice year, I think a little better than any of us ever thought that he would have. I haven't forgotten that I was the guy in spring training that said I didn't even see where he fit on the roster. He's had a better year than what he had, but or than what was expected. But moving ahead, he had an option for $7 million next year. I'm not sure that they would have picked that up anyhow. Brandon Moss is probably roughly to make over $8 million in arbitration. I think it's a tough sell based on the year that he's had to justify that cost. And Mark Zepchinski, he's a guy, in the arbitration process that would have landed somewhere between $2.5 and $3 million. And we can talk baseball economics forever and ever, but if you're trying to build a team on an $85 million payroll, this kind of always goes back to my theory of, the $6 million man. You just can't afford average veterans. And that's kind of what those guys all were. And I think they can get similar production from guys making a fraction of what those guys, were projected to make for 2016. And so for those reasons, I think what they did was good moves at the deadline. I think looking ahead, if, you want to play the crystal ball game, I think there's a fair chance that in 2018 or 2019, we'll be saying, the Indians really struck when the iron was hot, when Matt Holliday got hurt and the Cardinals were in a little bit of a panic situation. Within 12 hours of Matt Holliday, hurting his hamstring, they had moved Brandon Moss for, their number 3 prospect and their top pitching prospect in a farm system that is pretty deep and is, historically known to produce good quality players. So, I think if you're going to strike when the iron's hot, I think Chris Antonetti did a great job there. And the only thing I would say, to me, that deadline is a little bit of a precursor. I heard him say several times, they're listening to the value of Carlos Carrasco and others. We're going to go down that road in the winter. I'm the closer they got to the deadline and the teams that they were talking to, I don't know that I necessarily feel like it's a good idea, but I think we're definitely going down that road again come winter, the idea of trading a starting pitcher.
And again, you don't want to get into the whole giving away one. That's the problem of the Indians of the past. But the balance is so shifted on this team that unless you're going to open up the payroll to the levels that we know that they're not going to do, I'm not even asking them to do that. We know that's not happening. So what other choice do you have but to try to maximize the assets that you have. But I go back to, you and I have talked about this before, and you always stress this point. There's no guarantee that the pitchers are the same next year or 2 years from now or 3 years from now. So that becomes such a tricky proposition, because maybe you deal a guy or two and you bring in some offensive studs and you really balance things out that way, and then all of a sudden the rotation falls apart. But what other choice do they have if they're not going to spend a truckload more money than to take the depth that they have on that side and try to balance this team out? I mean, again, coming off of a road trip here where in 7 games they have 16 runs in 7 games, just a hair over 2 runs a game. Meanwhile, you can't win games when the last week and a half your starters have an ERA under 1.7. You know what I mean? I mean, they're just killing it right now,
Yeah. As I watched the trade deadline unfold, and I really saw what other teams were getting for packages, I think this is a interesting trade deadline. I wonder, kind of in a trendy kind of way, like if this was a tipping point where teams for a long time have really been reluctant to give up top prospects. And when we saw a number of teams trade quality and a number of top prospects, I just wonder if, the closer it got to the deadline, I felt like if the Indians traded Carlos Carrasco, it was going to be for a mountain. And if it's for a mountain, I'm definitely willing to listen. I mean, everybody has a value, Jerry, where you don't say no. But in general, I mean, you said what choice do they have? I'll give you a scenario that I don't like, but I think maybe is unfortunately the safe play or maybe the best long-term play. It's not going to sit well with fans, and it doesn't sit well with me either. But you kind of hit the nail on the head, and I've said this before too. You just can't bank on all of these starters being healthy and putting up the numbers that they have this year. And I think if you trade one, the possibility of this rotation going sideways, that chance goes up quite a bit. And if you look at the upper levels of their minor league system, there's nothing else there, Jerry. I mean, Cody Anderson has struggled of late, and I would think, and I honestly would kind of hope that he gets the rest of the year almost regardless of his numbers or his production, because they don't have anyone else. I mean, if not Cody Anderson, then you're going back to TJ House and Josh Tomlin and guys like that. There isn't another prospect at AAA. You're heading to AA to guys that probably aren't ready if you're going to replace Cody Anderson. And if you trade one of those other guys, that opens up another hole. And I just think, in today's day and age, if you don't have starting pitching and you don't have defense, you don't have a winning team. And I've harped on the defensive end forever and ever and ever and ever. I really feel like it would be a step backwards to trade one of those starting pitchers. I mean, unless you get just an amazing, unbelievable haul, I just don't think I'd do that deal. And to answer your question, what choice do you have? The choice that you have is not a good one to sell fans on, but I hate to say this, but you're going to run the same roster that you have right now, right on back out there next year, and you're going to wait for those albatross contracts to expire. And you go to 2017, and unfortunately, you're playing a 162-game exhibition schedule next year to see what guys you have that can be a part of this roster when some salary frees up to try and put a competitive, contending team on the field for 2017. And
let me jump in. Let me jump in here. I can't
as tough as that is to swallow,
no, we can't
I'm not
do
sure that maybe it's not the best move.
We can't talk about that right. Let me ask you. Okay, albatrosses, contracts, and all of this stuff. How does it work as far as what percentage of time does a cat have to be on the disabled list before a team can get insurance to pay off the rest of their contract? How does that work in Major League Baseball? Because I'm not talking about Michael Bourne, but Nick Swisher has spent enough significant time that you would think, I get it, your rates are going to go up, your premiums or whatever. I don't care about that. But there has to be a point. Can the Indians not claim a contract, whatever it is, insurance, use the insurance that they use to insure these contracts and just write off Nick Swisher as a disability claim?
Well, to answer your question, I don't think that comes into play until Nick Swisher says that he can't play anymore.
Then you would go to arbitration, right? And you would have your doctor saying, hey, he can't play at this level anymore, and he would have to have his doctor saying, yes, he can. Obviously, you're going to get an argument from Nick Swisher.
I can't ever remember a situation where that's ever happened.
Okay,
Jerry,
I'm just curious. I had to ask.
I mean, I think guys have retired because they can't play anymore, and there's life still on their contract, and maybe that's a possibility. I have just my own personal gut feeling and opinion. I don't know that I have a lot to base it on, other than just my gut says when you're talking about Nick Swisher, I think everyone involved is probably tired of everyone else. I think in a lot of ways he knows that the guy is done the way the rest of us do. They have a contract with him. In a lot of ways, they don't really have any choice but to get him healthy. But I don't know that he's necessarily really a part of this team. I don't know that he's necessarily the most loved guy in that clubhouse, like maybe alludes to be at times. When was the last time you ever heard anyone in the organization say, and when we get Nick Swisher back? Right. I don't think anyone on that roster is looking to him for leadership or aid. And I'm not, like I said, I don't have anything to base it on, and I'm not even saying that there's bad blood. I just think there's like lukewarm blood. I think everyone involved is just kind of indifferent. And maybe Nick Swisher won't want to play anymore after this year. I kind of feel like, I think that lukewarmness is a two-way street. I don't hear him saying, man, I'm dying to get back. It's killing me to watch this team struggle. I got to get back and help these guys out. I got to get healthy. He kind of seems to be content to, be on the longest rehab assignment of all time. And he's not like going through his agent fighting to, get back on the roster. As crazy as it sounds, I almost wonder if this is going to drag all the way to September when rosters expand, and he'll magically be cleared about September 1st, so they don't have to move someone off the active roster for him.
Well, you know what? I'm with you on a lot of that, and I don't see him fighting to get back and play here right now. But I go back to a quote that I brought up, a month or 6 weeks ago that, he was talking future terms, not just about finishing out this contract with the Indians, but how he had plans on one more, perhaps 2-year contract after that before he was done. He was talking big picture terms that he still had many plans here for the future. So that didn't sound to me like a guy who, now he may be frustrated with the Indians and he may realize, like everything that you said, I think sounds like it's dead on as far as, that goes. And maybe he's willing to sit back. He's like, hell, you're going to pay me $15 million to do this year, whatever, it's your money. But I do think that I don't think he's ready to call it quits just yet. And I think that he wants to go longer than just what he's got here in Cleveland. So maybe, and that's what I brought that up 2 weeks ago. Mike, I brought this up a few weeks ago, and I asked you, doesn't it reach a point where if a team looks at a guy and says, we're willing to continue writing this check because we have to. And we're willing to have you on our 25-man roster because we have to, because we can't do whatever, send you down, whatever you have to do. We're willing to eat it, but you're not going to play. You're simply not going to play, and that's all there is to it. But
that's what I feel like they should be doing with Michael
and
Bourne.
then I agree with you there. But, I mean, at that point,
that's
you
kind
have
of
to
what
leave.
You brought up. I mean, at the beginning,
you know what I mean?
Who would I like to see, in the last couple months? And, if you want to swallow that terrible pill of, 2016 being a 162-game exhibition season, as depleted as this top of the farm system is with starting pitching, it has a mountain of outfield prospects. And, Bradley Zimmer has been the hot name this year. If you don't want to go to him right away, then before you go to him, why not see what else you have in a Tyler Naquin, in a James Ramsey? I mean, that's a guy they traded for a year ago for Justin Masterson, and they told us, what a steal that was. And they seem to not be interested in giving some of these young guys, an opportunity. I'll be frank and say I've seen all I need to see out of Lonnie Chisenhall, and I don't care if he plays right field, third base, or play-by-play announcer. I mean, I've seen the Jerry Sands of the world. I mean, those guys are 4A guys. I mean, Jerry Sands especially. I mean, he's no different than Shelley Duncan and Jack Hanahan of the last couple of years.
Jack Hanahan. Oh,
you're not
damn.
You're not building a division winning or playoff caliber team with Jerry Sands on it. I'm not saying that you will with James Ramsey or Tyler Naquin, but you might as well find out. Or you find out in the last month here, month and a half, and you find out next year, and eventually you bring Bradley Zimmer up, and I think Zimmer's played a lot of center field, and I think he'll probably make his major league debut as a center fielder. But a lot of people feel in the prime of his career, he's a guy that's going to shift to right field anyway. So, I mean, let's see what these other guys have, because I have a really good idea what they have in Lonnie Chisenhall, and I have a really good idea what they have in Jerry Sands and others. And I think it's time to widen the net. If you're going to be stuck with the albatrosses, then, start widening the net of the people that you're willing to play. And I'll be honest, I think a lot of that falls on Terry Francona. He is not, and I feel more and more strongly about this every day. He is not a young players manager, Jerry.
No, he's not.
I have not looked the numbers up yet, but I'm going to. I'm convinced, without looking it up, that this is the youngest team he's ever managed, and he's a veteran player manager. And I don't think he's the best guy for this job. I'm not necessarily saying go out and fire him, but this guy, this situation that he's currently in right now, this isn't his best situation to thrive in. And I think he's got to, take a look at himself, and he's got to take a step back and, to go along with what you said, he's got to be willing to put Michael Bourne on the bench. We know what we've got in Michael Bourne, too. I mean, to me, he's no different than, Jerry Sands and Lonnie Chisenhall. We know what we've got, and he's not going to get younger, and he's not going to get faster. And you got to swallow some pride, and let's look at some other guys.
Oh, I agree with you, and I'm totally with you on that. Those names that you mentioned, and it's funny because I just now, as you were talking, I remembered us talking about this a couple weeks ago, and I remember what you said when I pitched that, because to me, at that point, you leave a guy an option. You go to Bourne and you go to Swisher, and you go, hey, man, we will honor every aspect of this contract, but you will occupy those two spots at the end of the bench, and you just will not figure into anything other than an emergency pinch hitting situation. So if you want to play baseball, we should pursue a situation where you can go play baseball somewhere else. But I remember what you said. You go, Jerry, to be honest with you, I don't know that those guys don't just say okay and cash the check, because what's their motivation to go? But to me, if either of those guys have aspirations of playing baseball, and guys are gamers, guys are deep down, no matter how spoiled they get, I think sometimes guys still have that, and I do wonder if either of these guys does have that gamer, that pride, that whatever that makes them want to go play, even if they don't want to play well. They just want to be playing somewhere just to, be in the game every day. You leave that their only option. I can't. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, the union cannot go sue the organization, cannot go sue There's nothing, no players union. Nothing can be wrong with that, right? As long as we pay you and do what we have to do contractually, we don't have to play you. We don't have any obligation to give you a fair shot at making this team. We're just simply going to follow the letter of our contract. And at that point, you have no choice but, if you want to play, to go, okay, what can we do to buy this thing out and let me go play somewhere else?
I mean, they can make out any lineup that they want.
Right.
And so, I mean, they can stop playing guys.
Right.
I feel like in a lot of ways they've kind of already done that with Nick Swisher. I mean,
isn't that what the Yankees?
I mean, I'm not in
threatening?
Nick Swisher's knees, but I don't think they're getting any better. I mean, his knees are as good or bad today as they're going to be for the foreseeable future. And I just think those guys are what they are. And like you said, I mean, they have to pay them, and you can dream up any scenario, but it just doesn't work, and they're going to have to pay them. They're not getting that money off their payroll. I mean, the fact of the matter is, they're going to have an $85 million payroll next year, and $30 million of it is going to go to those two. And I'm completely with you. If you're going to have a $55 million payroll for the rest of the team, you might as well get those two guys off the roster.
Guys. Yeah.
Move on,
exactly.
eat it, and try to build a team for 2017.
And isn't that what I remember? All the talk about the Yankees. Now it's hindsight because A-Rod's playing baseball again. But all the talk when he was trying to come back was there was nothing he could offer the team. He'd be lucky to find a spot as a pinch hitter and a utility player. And the Yankees are content to just pay him what they owe him and not play him and make him sit there. And that was perfectly fine in that situation. So even though it's a different
the only
situation,
difference is the Yankees are willing to eat salary. I mean,
right,
I
exactly.
If A-Rod would have come out and hit, $110 in spring training and been an arrogant loudmouth, I think they would have cut him before the season started. I think even when he had a good spring training, I think they thought he would flame out and they would be letting him go by May. But, the difference is the Yankees will eat salary and the Indians won't.
Well, I just wanted to clarify because I didn't know if the union, they've got the best union in the world for professional sports for a reason. I didn't know if there would be some claim that they could make that these dastardly Indians were trying to sabotage these guys' what years were left in their playing careers, because to me, as long as there's no union issues, then that's how you handle it. You simply let them know, we know we have to pay you, but we do not have to play you. We can't go forward like this. So if you want to continue to get paid, that's awesome.
Jerry,
if not,
let's
work it out.
There's several guys in the industry who have written stories and have publicly said that, if they were running the Indians, they would let one or both of them go. I mean, I think we talked about it like a month or so ago.
You know
what? Tweeting with
Let me say something
of
too.
Grantland, and he tweeted back at me, "I'd cut Michael Bourne today."
Mike, we talk about accountability with that front office. As a matter of fact, Dan and I were just talking about the stark contrast when you look at Detroit and them. I mean, to me, that puts even more focus on accountability because you see a team that has had success and they made moves and made changes. But part of that, too, has to do with what we say. If it's known by us and it's known by the fans, then it's clearly known by the players and the agents and all of that the Indians don't eat salary, that there is no accountability. That's why perhaps it's intriguing to these guys to sign a long-term contract with the Indians because they know that there's not going to be a chance that there's going to be an issue coming down the road. So maybe what you said would be a difference there too, because all of a sudden you shake up the culture, and I'd cut them yesterday too. 100%, you can quote me on that. I'd have cut both of them, just to be honest with you. But there's a shake up right there. What does a guy do when he sees that and he goes, well, damn. Well, at least they're only playing cats that are playing, and they're not afraid to ship a guy out, But that's not going to happen, obviously.
Yeah, and I think, that goes to, a greater issue of, the gigantic disconnect between the fan base and the front office. The front office that is still, like you said, I mean, when national writers, when guys that have played the game, and you, me, and everybody else that has a set of eyes or a set of ears knows that those two are done and on their way to the glue factory. And Chris Antonetti and Mark Shapiro continue to tell us that, they feel they have something left. I mean, it's insulting to everyone around them. And to try and sell someone a ticket in the next breath is foolish.
Yep, and there you go.
I mean, it goes back to a conversation from a couple of weeks ago. I think they would win fans over if they let go of either or both of them, and they just came out and admitted their mistake. Just say you messed up.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they would most definitely win some PR points. And you talk about the disconnect, although at this point, what are you supposed to do? You can't exactly say, come watch the Red Hot Indians. But, Mike, you got the same email as me that says, this is all it says in the subject line. Indians begin 6-game homestand with $1 dogs, $2 beers, and Rockin' Blast. And, I mean, that's where we are at this point, man. We're just listing the promotions for the homestand and hoping to get some people out. Now, this will be a rather well-attended homestand coming up here because you've got double back-to-back. There's a bad expression. You've got back-to-back Rockin' Blast nights. They got the Brantley bobblehead. You got the always popular $1 dogs. You've got Bob Feller bobble coming up here against the Yankees. Will be some decently attended crowds. But, I mean, that's where we're at. I mentioned it the other day. I came back up from Dayton, and there was that $1 dog off the side of the freeway coming up a different way hitting me. That's all it was come get some $1 hot dogs. And I'm like, damn it. But what else are you supposed to say at this point? But that's that disconnect again. Do you know how much of a shock it would be to open up one of those emails that says, Indians say thank you to the team, Boom. That would get me more interested in the rest of the season than 20 Rockin' Blasts, man.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I think, maybe something that we realize, but we don't talk about or acknowledge, in terms of the disconnect. I mean, you just brought it up. You said, this will be a good homestand attendance-wise. I think that in a weird way is really sad because to me, what this tells me is this fan base that attends games is really down to just the core that will go no matter what. We'll go if the weather's nice. We'll go if it's fireworks. We'll go because it's the weekend. And essentially, winning and losing to the few people that are left that go kind of really doesn't matter. I mean, their ticket sales are not going to take a dip because they've had an absolutely awful July since, the All-Star break, and they've traded off 3 pieces of their team that they thought was going to the World Series. I mean, the attendance will have no impact. And I think, to me, that's as scary as anything because in a lot of ways, I mean, it's at rock bottom. I mean, in terms of
here's the thing.
Fan interest and fan participation.
That's interesting because I'm going to give you a theory of mine that circles back to 2013. But when you talk about that, man, and you get to the fan base at that very level, first off, as a joking kind of sarcastic remark, the Indians have now the audience that they say they wanted because, of course, you remember the famous quote
the
from
famous
a few years
Mark
ago.
Shapiro line.
If you're coming just for winning and losing,
this might not be for you.
Right. And that now they have that fan base, and it's down to this. Dan's been saying for 2 years, Dan Wismar, that that's the audience that the Indians have now is the promotions. That's why the last 2 seasons have been the most promotion-packed in the history of this franchise, because those are the attractions now. And now going back to what you said, I've kind of been playing with a theory that, to me, I think the Indians are in a worse position than they were in the, when we talk about how dark it was right before they hired Terry Francona, signed Swisher, Bourne, brought in Giambi, did that stuff there and started that 2013 season that reinvigorated things. Because to me, now I think you've got a more angry core fan base because you teased them, because it looked like, okay, we're out of the doldrums here. Things are going to boom. And as you have pointed out, the last 2 off seasons, regardless of my stubborn hoping to see the Indians, get where I want to see them get, no changes, back-to-back off seasons, the disconnect that they keep throwing back out to the fan base with the way they see things completely differently than the fan base sees things. It's okay to have different agendas and go, hey, now we got to look at it one way, you look at it another way. But these people live in different worlds than the fan base that is with the team. I honestly believe that they're in as bad and maybe worse of a place coming into this offseason than that one, because here you are again, except you've already given them false hope. You've already brought them up once. So now what do? You don't have another Terry Francona to bring in. You're damn sure not going to spend another $110 million or whatever in an offseason. So now what do you do to bring that fan base back up like you did at the bridge between 2012 to 2013? What do you do now? Because you can't do the things that you did then. Man, that sucks. It feels like the last 2 years have almost kind of been for naught, and now you're sitting right back there to where you have a very crucial offseason. And I'm not saying it all is lost. They've got a good core. I like a lot of the stuff for the next 4 or 5.
Well, if you think that this is a crucial off season, I'm about to be the wet blanket to your hopes and dreams, because
I know, because you say they're going to do nothing.
I expect them to do the exact same thing they've done the last 2 years, which is next to nothing. I mean, 2 years ago they signed David Murphy. Last year they traded for Brandon Moss. I mean, I don't know who the winner of 2016 version of that is by name, but I expect that his identity will be revealed between now and spring training, and that's the guy you're going to get. And I don't really expect a lot more to change. And I mean, again, that goes back to the whole disconnect. I mean, you talk about how disappointed you are and how they're in a worse situation. I wouldn't disagree with any of that. And I think some of that's self-inflicted wounds, not just from the bad decisions that they've made, but from their own bad spin. I mean, they've done nothing to this roster for 2 years, and they're kind of like the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
You know what? Now that you say, let me jump in there, because with that, I've got a theory, and this is not like, hey, look, man, I'm no scientist here. It's
but they continue to spin and tell you that it's all okay.
And here's my idea behind that is, do you see? I asked Dan this the other day, and he's like, man, I hadn't really thought of that. Honestly, you look at an organization that has tempered its expenses to a certain level, that is cutting. To me, they've added assets to their tangible, physical portfolio as far as the stadium and some of those things, their investments that they've made. I've not heard nothing. I don't know nothing. It's just I'm curious if these Indians are not being spruced up to be sold here over the last couple of seasons, and that is the true bottom line perhaps that ownership is looking at. Because when you're cutting, and I know they've never been free spenders, but when you're tight with the expenses everywhere and you're adding certain assets that build the value, I mean, just part of what they're doing looks to me like a company that's cleaning up their ship for some new guy to come in and take it off their hands.
It's possible. I wouldn't argue against that, other than that I know that a year or two ago they explored the idea of selling this team as LeBron was possibly coming back My only counter to that would be if you're going to put out a mediocre to below average product with the things going on in downtown Cleveland right now, you can ride a small bit of that wave to some people trickling into your ballpark, whether it be around Cavs season or the Republican National Convention. I mean, Cleveland is a growing, thriving city over the next couple years and a place to be. So I wonder if they would, necessarily want to give up some of that revenue that might be headed their way. I'll play, I don't even know if it's devil's advocate, but maybe worst case scenario that kind of goes along with some of your theory. What if they're doing all of these improvements and when their lease is up at 2023, they can say, we did all of this and nothing has changed here. We've tried all of these things. We brought in a good manager. We spent in free agency. We fixed up our ballpark, and attendance is not improving. And if you get to the end of that lease expires, and if you're a new owner coming in, whether we want to accept it or not, I think a new owner could make a really good case that maybe this isn't the place to have baseball.
And that's a scary but very realistic proposition as well, too. Yeah, and then 2023 is nothing.
I mean, and when you look at the payroll and you look at the contracts that have been signed, I mean, 2023 is 8 years away, but it's going to be sooner than what you think. I mean, a number of these guys are signed as you close in on that.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense too. And then that really becomes a precarious situation because, as you said, man, it's one thing to say, oh, well, the Dolans wouldn't do that. It's another to say, hey, they sell it to somebody who says, hey, we got no love here. We're going to put this team in Timbuktu or whatever. And we're not trying to fast forward from here to the, Art Modell strikes again here in Cleveland, but these things are all very realistic and in the air, man. And what sucks is that we're talking about all this, Mike, when we don't need to be. And I think that's what's got Indians fans frustrated. It's got you and I frustrated because they've shown glimpses of having the pieces to build around. I mean, imagine, the core of this team, the main thrust of this team with the right complementary pieces around it. This would be one of the best teams in baseball.
I think so, but I'll be honest too. I think, and I don't mean this as bad as it sounds, but the Indians have a cheap core because they've signed them all to very team-friendly contracts.
Okay.
There are days that I wonder, is this, we hear all about this core, and this is the core that we watch every day. It's like, you always see the best in your own kids. You don't necessarily see the worst in your own kids. You don't look at them, compared to everybody else. But I mean, what is the core of this team? You're talking about Kipnis and Brantley. Yes. You know me. I'm the president of the Francisco Lindor Club, but the guy still only has about 200 plate appearances, if that, at this point. We think he's part of the core, but truth be told, I mean, there's no guarantee. The same applies for Giovanni Urshela. And you have the 4 starters. I mean, if you want to toss Cody Allen in there.
And Gomes.
I mean, okay, you're right, Gomes. So add him in. But that's
my core.
I mean,
that's where I'm at.
You're talking about 8 or 9 guys. I mean, don't you think you could go through almost every roster in baseball and point to a group of 8 or 9 guys that you'd want to build a team around? I mean, I think that that's accurate. And so I almost feel like we've been in some ways duped into believing that this team is closer than really what it ever was, because every team has 8 or 9 guys. It's the teams that have 18 or 19 guys that are the ones that are playing in October. So, I mean, how close are they really? Because I agree with you. Michael Brantley and Jason Kipnis and Yan Gomes and all those guys that I listed are good players, but every team has 7, 8, 9
The
good
pitching
players.
separates it a little bit. I do think that puts it at a higher premium. I agree with you. You're absolutely right. I do think it's hard to find a team that has a rotation. Any the imbalance that the Indians have right now, where it's all tilted towards one side of the slate.
Yeah, and and that's where I get back to, if you have 8 or 9 guys, and I agree with you, I do think they have a strong starting rotation. I mean, that's the strength of this team, and I think that's important. And if they're not like everybody else, that's the reason that they are not like everyone else. But I mean, I think we kind of get hooked a little bit into believing that maybe these guys are a little bit better than what they are because they're maybe that core is a little younger than some other teams' cores, and maybe they're signed a little longer than some other teams' cores. But I'm not really sure that core is like light years better than. I mean, you think the Kansas City Royals would swap cores? I don't think they would. I mean, do you think the Minnesota Twins would necessarily swap cores? I mean, they have a young group. I'm not sure that that's like a blink of an eye. Heck yeah, give us the Indians core. I just don't know that that's the case.
I totally. It sounds like everything I agree with, man. I'm totally with you there. Man, we're getting into stuff that you and I can drag into in the off season.
This is why people call me, Mr. Negative and a wet blanket, because I just come around and rain on parade.
No. But you know what? That's the thing, man, is that I'm all about that because it can't just be one perspective, one way of looking at it. When we talk, listen, I joke that you're negative and I'm positive and I'm trying to be eternally optimistic. But seriously, as we talk all the time, we'll bounce back and forth points that the other one will be able to agree with. You open my eyes to different ways of. I don't completely come over to the negative side of the tracks, but you open my eyes up to things that I have to realize or at least think about and talk about, put into the conversation. And that's what's great about this. And I mean, I get it. Bruce gets with me all the time. He's, Mike's always so negative. And I'm like, I get it. Like, I know where you're coming from there. But I think when we go back and forth, that's what I love about it is that you cannot just go, hey, it's all right. They're going to turn it around. They're going to go on, a 50-game winning streak here. Like me, I'm the king of optimism. Bob from Connecticut calls in the other day, and he's like, hey, man, they're still going to make a playoff run. And I'm like, Bob, listen, I'm as optimistic as you, but do you realize that for that to happen, they have to win 75% of the games that they have left? There isn't a team in baseball right now winning 75% of their games. So, I mean, I can be as optimistic as the next guy. For me, I'm hoping they play 10 games over 500 and can just get back to 500 by the end of the season. To me, that's a playoff run right there because that's still playing 550, 600 ball the rest of the way, which they have not come close to doing all season long. So I get managing expectations and keeping it realistic, but that's what I like about you and I, because the upside, and you may be too far on the downside, but together we make, good points and back and forth. But I mean, I need that because otherwise, hey, I'll be here this off season again going, hey, they just need a couple guys to hit better and we'll be good to go. And that is definitely, there's more to it than that. So I don't just go with the Mike's negative and Jerry's positive or any of that. I truly believe that we each make good points that really go back and forth and make you think about the whole picture, even if some of the whole picture sucks, because these are not great things that we're talking about. Trust me, I think you and I would both much rather go, hey, they're just spending $800 million, but that's stupid to have those conversations that aren't realistic either.
Yeah, I agree. And, I tell people all the time, and I really mean this, I want the Indians to be successful, and the Indians are my team.
Think?
I've never sat down on the couch and hoped that they would lose. I have never rooted against the Indians in my life. But with that said, I'll never blindly look at a team and just convince myself that they're going to be good if I don't think that they're going to be good. And I think, I think that there are some people out there that are that way. And I'm not saying that you're one of those guys. I'm not. But I think, it in some ways, it's kind of when we talk about, the ESPN people that kind of make up news, and I say things like, pick people that you like and, read what they have to say and don't necessarily even agree with them. Just take what they give you and make your own decisions. And that's kind of how I feel about the Indians, because the Indians organization gives us their own spin all the time. And I think a lot of people just eat that up and accept that as truth. And I don't. I mean, agree or disagree with anything that I ever say. I'll make my own decisions, and I don't eat, what they're feeding me, because I'll read and because I'll look at numbers and I'll make my own decisions. And I think if we had more of that, I think it would be good. And unfortunately, there'd probably be more people that'd be a little more negative like me. But the truth of the matter is, we need to all, look at it maybe without a little more, or without some of that Indian spin on it, and look at it from a reality, perspective. As you were talking and you said, your hope was they would play 10 games over 500 and get back to 500 for the season. There was part of me in my stomach that kind of like groaned, because I thought, if they play 10 games over 500, we're going to hear all winter about how this team really turned a corner. And then when they run the same roster back out there, they're going to spin it to us again that here we go. And the same thing will happen.
You know what? I get it. And for those of you that missed that, because I was laughing over him, what Mike, that is a great point, that you don't want to root against them, having a good last stretch of the season and getting to 500. The idea is, though, that if you do that, much like winning 22 out of 24 or whatever you had to do to get to the playoffs in 2013, is that kind of Band-Aids it heading into the offseason, because then the front office can just look at us and go, hey, if they had just played better in April, May, and the beginning of June, then we would have been right in this thing. So we're going to stick with things. And you would almost rather see, you don't want to see the bottom fall out. You don't want to see them only win 10 games the rest of the way. But if the bottom falls out, then it makes it impossible to just say, oh, well, we're going to trot these guys back out. My problem is, too, you get into, which is another discussion you and I can get into next week. I brought this up to Dan the other day. Anybody that might want to see any kind of changes, whether it's in the front office, the management, or any of the moving pieces, to me, they're all or nothing, like the boy band, man. This is not bits and pieces. To me, if you lose one, you lose all three. I mean, and so that's something else, too. We talk about, the Browns and their shakeup. I say this all the time. The Indians are the anti-Browns. The Browns get rid of everybody in 30 seconds. The Indians keep them for 13 years. They're just not quick to make changes like that. And so that's part of the risk, too, is that do you blow up the whole everything? Because do you see any way to make any tweaks to the front office without Terry Francona taking a walk, or vice versa? Absolutely not.
No. I mean, I agree with you. I think
and we're blowing everything up.
I think they're a package deal, and maybe I'm diving into next week's topic, but I have a friend who said to me a couple weeks ago that he would fire Chris Antonetti, and I said, well, if you do, you're going to lose Terry Francona.
Right.
And he said, so what? His answer was, so what? And I thought that was, a little, flip to write off a very quality manager, which I do think Terry Francona is. But I would also say, just like what you said, the Indians are the anti-Browns. Where the Browns fire people in 30 seconds, the Indians hang on to them for 30 years. And there's certainly a groupthink among their front office that has not changed for a long time. I mean, the names and the roster has changed, but the things that they have done, they were doing 10 years ago. I mean, Jerry, what is the difference between the David Murphy, Ryan Rayburn platoon and the David DeLucci, Jason Michaels platoon? It's the same thing. It didn't work 10 years ago, and it's not working to provide a winner now. And really, a lot of things, haven't changed. The more I think about it, even to me, if you think Terry Francona is a fantastic manager, will this front office ever get him a roster that he can make a serious playoff push to win with? And if the answer is no, then why are you hanging on to Terry Francona? Because his value isn't there.
But you know what, Mike? Let me throw something.
To get the 500 seems foolish.
Well, let me throw a monkey wrench in, too, and Dan and I were pitching this around. Great point here, too. This you may not have a decision to make, and I don't mean that Terry Francona would quit for baseball purposes or anything like that. This season has taken a toll on him health-wise. Again, we know he had issues at the end of his Boston run, too, and he had to get away. I don't know physically that Terry Francona has more than perhaps another season or two, and that's if things are optimal and the Indians are in position to have a good next few seasons. I don't know physically that he doesn't, at the end of this season, say this really took a toll on me and I need to step away again, because I do believe that is also a possibility.
I think it is a possibility. I don't think it's a strong possibility just because he just signed an extension at the beginning of the year to go through 2018. And I would be the first to say, if there was any inkling of that less than 12 months ago and he added on to his contract and he's going to get paid for 3 years of not doing work, that's pretty bush league in my opinion.
That's that buddy system maybe, you know? I mean,
what's that?
Maybe that's that buddy system. Maybe it's like, hey, let's go ahead and get you signed just in case anything happens here down the road, you know? That's something to question, too, if that happens, you know?
I don't doubt that. I mean, I don't doubt that as a possibility, but, you know.
How many times have you heard a story over the years of a guy going over and saying, hey, I'm just saying, go get your money. Go get your contract signed now because something's getting ready to change. Something's getting ready to happen. And then you hear a story. The guy's like, yeah, I got my contract signed 5 minutes before so-and-so quit or walked out or whatever, you know. I'm just saying, those things happen all the time.
For sure. You know, and it's possible. Like I said, I don't think it's probable, but I think it's possible. And I would say on the flip side, if Terry Francona has had such a toll taken on him. I mean, let's play your scenario out. If Terry Francona walks in on October 5th and says, fellas, you know, I don't know that I'm the right guy to, you know, be a part of a rebuilding process with young guys, and, you know, I don't know that I want to do this. If he's going to take his ball and go home, I would be very interested to hear anyone's great, valid explanations as to why Mark Shapiro and Chris Antonetti stay around, or why you want them to stay around. If Terry Francona is leaving, what better time to make a clean sweep and, you know, let's bring in a new front office with a new organizational direction, because the direction that they have been in is, you know, the same one for, you know, 10 plus years, and it really hasn't, you know, amounted to very much.
Mike Brandenburg, now you know where we're going to be going over our next few months' conversations. We've opened it up. We're going to dive down that rabbit hole the next few months. But there's still baseball to be played. Hey, a couple of Rock and Blasts this weekend, a bobblehead, a Feller jersey, some cool stuff to get out there. And some baseball, too. They've got the Twins. They're cool right now. I think they've lost 5 in a row coming into this one. And then you got the Yankees coming up on the back end of that. So we'll talk some more Tribe here next week. Let's end this on a positive note. You know, we're less than 2 months from the kickoff of basketball training camp. And I was mentioning at the beginning of the show, I'll bring it back up just for you. Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving, LeBron going to Team USA camp. Doesn't impress me as far as Team USA, but it does as far as the Cavs, because that means those cats are feeling good, getting back into the basketball mode, and that's a good thing. Man, can you believe we're just that close to it being time for that again? Not trying to bypass the Browns and the Indians all at the same time, but hell, here come the Cavs coming not too far behind, my friend.
I'll be even dorkier and tell you I'm excited just for next week with the release of the schedule, because I want to see what games I'm getting on my season ticket packages.
Yeah, they're talking about the Christmas Golden State game. It's looking like the annual rematch of the finals matchup or whatever. That'll be interesting. Yeah, ticket. What is it, next week that they're releasing the schedule? Right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I heard just this morning. Was that was, you know, kind of part of that Cavs Warriors Christmas Day
leak
is that the schedule would be released. I think they said Wednesday.
Did you see the for the first time since the preliminary stuff we were talking about last year, Cavs right at the top. Cavs 2-1 favorites here heading into the season to be the NBA champions. The Spurs second at 4-1. The Warriors third in the odds here to start off as defending champions 9-2. But not very often that the defending champions aren't either first or second. But a lot of people, and obviously beefing up with LaMarcus Aldridge there.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see. I mean, I have full confidence that the Spurs machine is going to keep right on churning. But this season, I mean, sizes up moving ahead. The 2015-2016 season really kind of looks to be like a changing of the guard in San Antonio from the Duncan, Ginobili, Tony Parker core to a core of, Kawhi Leonard and LaMarcus Aldridge moving forward. Then those guys kind of become secondary parts.
Yeah, and you're seeing that now, and that's something to watch too, because how they do that, hopefully 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're watching the Cavaliers go through the same process as LeBron James becomes the elder statesman, and then Kyrie steps into kind of where Tony Parker is a few years younger, but, he's getting old. You know what I mean? And then who's the next guys that come in up underneath that?
LeBron James Jr.
There you go,
They're going to be like the Griffies.
They're going to be like the Griffies. That's great. That was such a cool deal.
Senior will toss Junior his first alley-oop dunk in
you know what, brother?
2021.
We look at things all jaded through grown-up sports talk eyes now, but I remember when I was a kid, I thought that was the coolest concept. Like, I was like, wow, that'd be so awesome to play baseball on the same team with my dad. Like, how cool would that be? I thought that was awesome. I think I was like, 8 or something at that time. I just remember thinking that was a really cool thing.
Hey, man, I'm not saying that things are fixed, but, it seemed to be quite advantageous that the ping pong balls bounced the Cavs' way when they were a bit of a dying franchise and they got LeBron James.
They've bounced our way several times.
I mean, you're not telling me that it wouldn't be good for marketing purposes and jersey sales and everything else, as LeBron's career starts to wind down, if after 1 year at OSU, LeBron Jr. Goes to the NBA and they just all of a sudden it turns up Cavs one way or another again, and seniors tossing alley-oops to Junior.
Let me tell you, we talk about the fix being in for the lottery. That'll be the first. You'll know the fix was in when the Cavs become the first team to win the NBA title and then also get one ping pong ball in the lottery and win at the same time and get Bron Jr. to come on home. I'm just saying. I mean, we may see some fishiness, but no, I'm with you, man, and that's all fun. It's good to look at the fun in the future.
If you can win the lottery 3 out of 4 years, anything's possible.
You know what I'm saying? That's like infinitesimal odds. I don't think you could. It's like the largest odds I've ever seen for that to have happened for them. But the odds nowhere near as big for them to be the champions this year, my friend, as they are 2-1 favorites to finish the job they started last year. And I can't wait, man, as basketball get a little bit closer every time you and I talk here. Cannot wait, of course. Not, again, trying to bypass everybody else, but that gives you a long-term goal just in case the short-term's not as fun.
Yeah, I'm all about the short term. In reality, I'm looking for a good ride. I'll tell you, my dad asked me. I know I told you I went to the Masters this year. My dad asked me a week ago if I was interested in going to the U.S. Open. Is next year just outside of Pittsburgh at Oakmont. And I said, man, I'd really love to go. I said, but that's the week of the Cavs parade. I said, I don't know if I can make that commitment.
Start planning for that parade now, Mike. You and we got to get the room booked and everything. We'll be there, man. Absolutely.
I'll have one booked well in advance.
Unfinished business will not be a mocking phrase this year here, although I really wish they would pick something else. I really hope that they don't go with that one because it's got a bad aftertaste here in Cleveland. Mike, my man, what are you guys working on this week? Anything good on Did the Try? I mean, of course it's good, but what are you guys working on this week?
We're kind of in the march of Pyro. Winning isn't the most important thing part of our season too, and we're kind of starting to take some looks at some other things and highlight some minor leaguers that have had some nice years. That we're going to get to know Rob Kaminsky here pretty soon, so look for that next week.
All right, man. Rob Kaminsky coming over. I'm telling you, man. I'll take any. I've told you that. I'll take any of those prospects from the Cardinals. That's for sure.
Yeah, if you can't draft your own,
take theirs.
Try to do what the Cardinals do.
Cardinals, Giants, those kind of farm systems, man. Give me those guys that come up through there. Mike, my man, great conversation. Good catching up after a couple weeks. And you and I, let's see, next week. Actually, no, next Friday I'm on the road. I've got a 3-day weekend again next weekend, so it'll be perhaps a week or two before we speak again.
Sounds good. I'll blame the Indians for not making into the rotation. How it goes.
All right, man. My man, Mike Brandenberry, you have a good one, my friend, and we'll catch up in the next week or two.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. I got orange over brown tomorrow.
There we go. Orange over brown. That's today. See, you're just a horrible
whatever.
fan. You
Whenever.
don't even know
Today,
what day
tomorrow,
it is.
whenever they're playing. I don't care.
All right. Mike Brandenberry, my man. Have a good one, buddy.
See ya.
All right. Mike Brandenberry, did the tribe win last night.com. Man, we're way over time. I'm not even going to take a final break here. I'm going to blow right into the end of the show, you guys. Thanks to Mike for being with us. Thanks to Jonathan Knight, the sports writer extraordinaire, for joining us. A good show. Next week, we'll add some new voice back in. We'll get John McMullen back in on the conversation. We'll get BJ Riddell, and we'll start rolling into fantasy football for winners once again. Coming up here, as we like to get into during the season, BJ is the man, and we'll get started getting you all set. Also, this weekend, Charles Morgan reminded me on Twitter here, we're going to reactivate and reopen up the Sports Fix Fantasy Football League, and we'll start taking registrations again from you guys next week. There'll be limited spots as always. It's a 14-team league, so you'll have to get in quickly. We'll tell you more about that here next week as we get rolling. Looking forward to that. This weekend, you guys, is not only I'm on the road, as I reminded you guys before, in Erie, Pennsylvania at the Saga Club for Pro Wrestling Rampage. I would love to see you guys come out and check me out. Of course, this weekend, the NFL kicks off as you've got the very first preseason game, the Hall of Fame game. Of course, the setup for that is the Hall of Fame weekend here. Aerosmith's down in Canton for a concert. The Hall of Fame class, it's a good one this year. You've got the Bus, Jerome Bettis, Tim Brown from the Raiders, the great receiver, kick returner, Charles Haley, Bill Polian, contributor, general manager of the Buffalo Bills for all those seasons that they went to 4 consecutive Super Bowls. Junior Seau, the late Junior Seau, linebacker, Will Shields, Ron Wolf, all inducted this Saturday into the Hall of Fame. I was just there. I mentioned it the other day with my son. They've really overhauled the Hall of Fame. It's a great spot to go check out. If you haven't, take your little ones out there. It's a good one. A lot of interactive stuff. And then, of course, it wraps up with the Hall of Fame game. Sunday, 8 p.m. Sunday Night Football's back on the air for at least 5 minutes. It's starters against starters. It'll be the Steelers and the Minnesota Vikings in the Hall of Fame game. And then, boom, the NFL season's off and running again, at least the preseason version of it. Of course, the Indians and the Twins home at Progressive Field. They've got Cody Anderson taking the mound tonight against Mike Pelfrey. Irvin Santana and Trevor Bauer on Saturday. Phil Hughes and Corey Cy Kluber taking the mound for the Indians. Twins up on the season series 4-2 over the Indians as they try to have a strong homestand. We mentioned all of the promotions coming up in this one. Rock and Blast on Friday and Saturday. Rock and Blast, of course, always big promotions. They're basically the fireworks nights on steroids. They're over 20 minutes long, each of them. So you've got the Roots of Rock and Roll here set up. You've got Dollar Dog Night, Michael Brantley bobblehead on Saturday, Kids Day on Sunday. Tuesday, you've got the Bob Feller jersey. Lots of reasons to go see the Tribe and the Minnesota Twins and then the New York Yankees. Monday, Dan Wismar will be here in the house with us. We'll talk about that as well. We'll talk to all of you guys about the happenings of the weekend. The brown and orange scrimmage. Who won? Brown? Orange? Who you got your money on? We'll see. Odds are pretty good that the Browns are going to win one way or the other. We'll talk about that. Anybody else gets injured? Who was the stars of the scrimmage? We'll get into that. The Hall of Fame ceremonies. Talk about the kickoffs and so much more. Monday, same bad time, same bad channel, noon, across the Sports Fix Radio Network. We love you, Cleveland and beyond. Look forward to seeing you next week. Another week kicked off here on the Sports Fix. We love you, baby. We'll see you next week here on the Fix.
Nothing pretty, so much hate up in this itty bitty city. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Put your hands up in the air, everybody say yeah, 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 yeah. Our city, blue lights separate the ground from the gritty. We're sick with it, could pass over any city that we visit.
The way